A few weeks ago, Anthropic published a detailed 36-page playbook for securing AI agents like Claude Code. It's a zero-trust framework and is especially important considering how frontier models like Claude Mythos, as well as OpenAI's Sol, are said to be highly capable at exposing cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So much so that the US government decided their release needed to be more tightly controlled. Now, leaving both the politics and the hype aside, here's what's genuinely changed. On one side, we're handing agents much more power in business, so more access, more autonomy, more freedom to just go and act on their own. And on the other side, the cost of attack has collapsed. An exploit that used to take a specialist months can now be brute forced by a coding agent in the wrong hands, working tirelessly around the clock. And elements of this playbook are genuinely useful. There's real practical advice in here for protecting yourself when you're running autonomous systems like coding agents. However, it is hard not to be cynical considering that Anthropic have been the ones to sow fear into this market by releasing Mythos, while conveniently this playbook is pushing the Claude security vulnerability scanner as the solution to it. So we'll just sidestep that for the minute, and in this video I'm going to boil this down to what actually matters for the agents that you run. How you can secure Claude Code or any custom AI agent that you're building on any platform. To get started, let's consider where the threats actually come from. Because when you deploy an AI agent, you can think of it as engaging a brilliant but very literal intern. And on day one, you hand them your keys, you give them access to your inbox, you give them a to-do list and set them off running. And when you break that intern down, there are really 5 separate things at play. There's the model that's doing the thinking. There are the tools it can reach out and call. There's a memory of what's happened so far. There's identity, so the credentials it carries around to prove it's allowed to do things. And there's autonomy, which is the freedom to decide its own next step without asking you first. And every single one of these 5 is a door, it's a way in. An attacker doesn't need to break your whole system, they just need to find one of these 5 doors left open. So how do most of us secure things today? Well, we generally build a wall, so it's the castle model. It's a hard shell around the building, a strong perimeter, and the idea is that once you're inside, you're trusted. Your identity is checked at the door, so you're one of the good guys, and that's the mental model that most people still use. But agents deployed internally blow a hole straight through this wall. And there's 3 reasons why. So first up, it moves at machine speed, so there's no human sitting there approving every single step, every single tool call. So there's no gatekeeper essentially in the loop. Secondly, it reads untrusted text all day long, so web pages, emails, documents, and any of that text can carry hidden instructions it might just obey. And finally, it holds standing access in a lot of cases. So these keys never leave its pocket. It's 24/7 access that it can leverage at any time. And when you put those things together, the core assumption here falls apart because a wall assumes there's a human gatekeeper, that everything inside is trustworthy. An agent has neither, so the wall simply can't hold. So if the wall falls, what then replaces it? And this is where the term zero trust comes in. If you can't trust inside anymore, the only stance left is never trust and always verify. You need to check every request at every one of these 5 doors every single time, even the ones coming from inside your own system. And the second half of that mindset is to assume a breach. Don't design for if someone gets in, you need to design as though the intruder is already inside, now wearing a staff's badge, having the ID. So the only question that matters then is, how far could they actually get before you'd ever know about it? And if we strip it right back, the core issue here is this lethal trifecta, as Simon Willison put it. And it's 3 ingredients. Number 1, the agent has access to private data. Number 2, it's exposed to untrusted content, so the open web, incoming emails, documents it didn't write. And number 3, it can take outbound actions, so it can send something back out into the world. Any one of these on its own is basically fine. So a model that reads the web, but can't touch your data and can't send anything isn't really any harm. But the moment an agent has access to all 3 at once, you've got the exact combination an attacker needs to walk right in. The untrusted content smuggles in an instruction, the instruction reaches your private data, and the outbound action ships it straight out the door. And this is not a rare edge case because an independent assessment this year looked at 100 production agents in the wild and found that 98% of them were sitting in all 3 legs of this trifecta at once. And only 11% passed a basic security bar. This research was carried out by the Cloud Security Alliance in their AI Agent Lethal Trifecta report, where they carried out an independent assessment of 100 commercial and publicly available production agents. Now that's a small sample, but it tells you the shape of the problem, which is that this is essentially the default behavior. Wiring up all three of these is essentially just what happens when you build a highly capable AI agent. And while this might seem very hypothetical, there are plenty of examples of this in action. The first time this actually happened in the wild was with the malicious MCP server. So someone published an MCP on NPM called Postmark MCP, and it was essentially for sending email, and it looked completely legit, but in one version the author quietly added a single line which hid a BCC so that every email the agent sent got silently copied to an attacker's address. And that one line that was added to that package is the whole trifecta in a single incident. The agent had access to private email, that's your data. It installed an untrusted package, that's the untrusted content, riding through a tool, and it could send email, that's the outbound action. So it hit around 300 organizations, quietly copying somewhere between 3,000 and 15,000 emails a day. And nobody saw a crash, there was no errors that were thrown. This is a supply chain attack in action. And a very useful idea from Anthropic's Zero Trust document is this. So if you consider the attacker, who's tireless and patient and possibly already inside, you need to judge every security control you have by one question, which is, does it make the attack impossible or does it just make it tedious? Because a lot of so-called solutions only make things tedious, so it's just a bump in the road. It's rate limits or running an odd port, maybe really long query strings. And for those types of security through obscurity, an attacker has infinite time, infinite patience, near zero per attempt cost. It'll happily write scripts and try tens, hundreds of millions of times overnight to find what it's looking for. So controls like these are just friction, they're not really security. And the only controls that survive are the ones that actually completely remove a capability. So that could be hardbound credentials, a secret that's physically tied to one machine, so a copied key wouldn't work elsewhere, expiring tokens, so access that dies in minutes instead of living forever, cryptographic identity, so a signed, provable who you are that can't necessarily be faked. Network paths that simply don't exist. If there's no route from A to B, no amount of patience is going to build it. And another useful tip they had in this book is the idea of using AI to automate the bookkeeping, but not necessarily the decisions. So let AI take the notes, gather the evidence, draft at a post-mortem, for example, the tedious stuff, but humans keep the calls on what actually matters. So what to disclose, who to phone, what the containment should be. And to get the lay of the land, OWASP, which is the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, has published this document on agentic AI threats and mitigations. And they've catalogued 17 distinct ways an agent can be attacked. And in Anthropic's Zero Trust document, they've compressed these into 5 families. If these are the types of conversations that you like having, then definitely check out our community, the AI Automators, where you can join hundreds of fellow builders, all creating production-grade, secure AI systems. The first is prompt injection, and this just means the text that your model reads can carry instructions that it then ends up obeying. The second is tool and resource misuse. So this could be an agent going rogue with an MCP server it has access to. Identity and privilege abuse is another one, so this is an agent inheriting far more permissions than it actually needs. Supply chain risks is another, so malicious packages as I discussed, or poisoned modules that you pull in. And memory and context poisoning is the 5th. So this is corrupting what the agent remembers, so it misbehaves later on, or retrieving corrupted information from the likes of a RAG database, for example. And most of these map straight back to the doors that we laid out earlier. So injection is the model door, identity abuse is the identity door, tool misuse, memory and context poisoning. Supply chain rides across all of these doors. And the 5th door, autonomy, that's the one that turns all of these from a slow problem into a fast one. And there are lots of different research reports done on agent security with some pretty stark numbers. In this Gravity report of over 900 executives and practitioners in the industry, they found 88% of organizations reported confirmed or suspected AI agent security incidents in the last year, with several practitioners revealing agents getting unauthorized write access to databases and attempting to exfiltrate sensitive information. And identity is the weakest link in this. This report showed that more than 2/3 of companies cannot clearly distinguish AI agent actions from human actions, with 74% of agents having overprivileged access, so way more authorization than they need to carry out the job. Their framework organizes all of this into a 3-stage maturity model. So there's foundation, which is the baseline, enterprise, and advanced, which is for high-risk deployments or really stringent kind of regulatory environments. Most people would be aiming to achieve foundation level in this case. From here, it's broken down into different categories for zero trust implementation, and there are specific callouts to native Claude Code functionality that you can lean on. So if we look at agent identity and authentication, if you have agent-to-agent communications, you shouldn't use kind of static API keys. And that's also the case for service authentication. So I'm sure many of you will have dropped API keys, static API keys, into a .env file. And if you have a coding agent with access to that project, it could open up that env file and read out all of the secrets. And then if it's prompt injected, it could send those elsewhere. So the recommendation here is short-lived tokens issued by an identity provider with automatic refresh, or using a vault, a secrets vault. For access control and authorization, perfectly authenticated agents cause damage when granted excessive permissions. So it needs to be the principle of least privilege here, role-based access control. That's very much specific to what the agent requires. And even with perfect access controls, a compromised agent could attack adjacent systems, so to have hard boundaries in between resources and isolation mechanisms. So how that's implemented in Claude Code then? Claude Code supports this by providing a deny by default permission that requires explicit approval for every write and execute operation, sandbox execution, write access restrictions, and manage settings. So there are a number of levers that you can use there. On the auditing side, you need logging of actions. So that is a foundation capability, comprehensive logs of agent actions with timestamps and context. And traceability means you need to know the IDs of the specific agents actually carrying out those actions. Claude Code supports this by providing open telemetry metrics and audit logging for carrying out actions in the cloud. Now that you know who the agent is, that they have the right level of access, that you are able to log and track what they're doing, then you can layer upon that behavioral monitoring and responses. So understanding what the baseline is, what the agent typically does, and then having some level of anomaly detection so that you know they have gone off script. And that way you can also then trigger automated responses. So from a Claude Code perspective, they support it by providing command injection detection that flags suspicious commands even when they match allow listed patterns, and then a fail closed matching. Then all of that can be further controlled around input validation and output controls. So you can sanitize inputs, basic input validation and length limits, for example. And Claude Code supports this with input sanitization and a command blacklist that blocks risky commands. If an attack does take place, then you need the ability to be able to recover from it. And an attractive attack pattern will be to go after the configuration of the agent. So you need a way to be able to reload a previous approved version control configuration. And from a recovery perspective, have a documented rollback procedure. So we're definitely in the enterprise world here. But Claude Code does support it by having version control settings for permission changes, MCP server, allow lists, etc. They then lay out an implementation workflow that you can use to actually deliver on this zero trust promise. So phase 1 is to identify your specific requirements on this. So what operational goals are you trying to achieve? Phase 2 is to manage supply chain risks. And here they borrow OWASP's idea of the AI bill of materials. Within phase 3, they talk about defining the agent boundaries. So this is what we talked about earlier around authorization and the principle of least privilege. Claude Code in this case assigns a unique session ID to each session and has IDs for the users and organizations, so you can track everything in logs. But having approved and prohibited actions all set in the settings.json file will provide more granular access control. You can also configure human in the loop in settings.json via the ask parameters, so that way it's a pop-up that requires approval. To defend against prompt injection, all inputs are essentially treated as untrusted, so they need to be processed before hitting the LLM. For phase 5, securing tool access, Claude Code supports explicit tool-based permissions within that settings.json file. And that could be at the global or the project level. And you can also use the pre-tool use hook for parameter validation as well. And when it comes to code execution, Sandbox is the best way to contain when tools behave unexpectedly, and that's now fully supported in Claude Code as well. Protecting agent credentials is key because if an attacker got access to the agent, it will get access to all tools that are linked with that agent. So ideally, you would have short-lived identity provider issued credentials as a baseline, and even better, have them hardware bound to that specific machine. Claude Code does store API credentials in the operating system's credential store. So there is a particular helper that you can use to actually retrieve secrets from external vaults, and that way you can integrate with other secret management systems. From a memory perspective, you want to isolate memory between sessions and users. Claude Code enforces this by default within a session. So as you can see, quite a lot comes out of the box with the likes of the Claude Code harness. It is key that you actually use it, particularly the likes of that settings.json. You need to really define that and tighten it up. But if you needed an additional layer on top, the Microsoft Agent Governance Toolkit is an MIT licensed open source repo that you can use to actually enforce policies, enforce a zero trust identity and execution sandboxing. And this is supported by lots of different coding agents as well. So there's a native Claude Code package that you can install using that plugin command. So once this is installed, if you run the AGT status command, you'll be able to see the configuration of the governance module. So you can see where the audit log is located, along with the actual policy document. And by default, it's ultra conservative. So if I ask, check the weather in Galway, we'll see that this is going to fire a pre-tool call hook, and it's looking for permission to actually carry out the action. So this third-party governance plugin is layered upon Claude Code's native permission layer that I went through a few minutes ago. And by looking at the Microsoft governance policy document, you can see it's in a very similar shape to Claude settings.json. So tool policies, you have a list of allowed tools, blocked tools, which ones require review. So we carried out a web search there, and that's why it asked me for permission. There are specific blocked tool calls, things like recursive deletes, dangerous bootstrapping, reading of secrets, and things like that. And then you have a full audit log of everything that has happened. And that's a key requirement as part of the zero trust framework. So it is a layer that's added upon it. Outside of an enterprise context, for a lot of people using AI tooling, achieving zero trust is going to add a lot of friction to the experience. That's why I think a risk-based approach is probably the best way to go. For example, the accept edits mode in Claude Code results in so many pop-ups, so many permissions prompts. Now, of course, you can build up your allowed list within your settings.json. From my perspective, I've been pretty happy with the new auto mode classifier in Claude Code. It's definitely not perfect. I have seen it stop certain actions that weren't explicitly requested by me, which I've been pretty happy with. That being said, I was running a hobby project a few months ago where I had an autonomous agent running 24/7, and to protect my system, I spun up a VM on hypervisor, so it was totally isolated from the rest of my file system. Even that, though, wasn't perfect because I didn't actually lock down the exact domains it could reach out to. It was a hobby project, there wasn't any real sensitive data, and from my own risk management perspective, I was happy with the isolation that VM gave me. Of course, I could have spun up a VPS as well, but I wanted to give it access to the GPU on this machine. And that's what I mean by risk management. It's up to you to assess the potential risks if you're not in an enterprise context. API keys is another example. You're best off to try to lock everything down outside of what's in the agent's sphere of influence. So in OpenRouter, for example, you can set credit limits on API keys. Within OpenAI's API key section, you can set specific permissions, you can link them to specific projects. So you need to make use of all of the various tooling that you have access to. I definitely see value in secrets managers like AWS or InFiscal or Bitwarden. Like, they're not immune to hacking either. But when it comes to protecting production grade secrets, absolutely, I see the value there. If you'd like to see how to design and deploy a secure multi-user AI agent, then check out this video here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.